All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. Appreciate you all very, very much. Big shout out to our sponsors, Sunny Reds, 1841 Abbott Road, just on the way from Highmark Stadium, and Imperial Pizza, 1035 Abbott Road, home of the best lunch special in town. This is a special episode, kind of an annual episode now. Back in March of 2021, I had on Joe Marino, Greg Tompsett, Bruce Nolan, and we had ourselves a little podcaster roundtable where we talked everything and anything other than the actual Buffalo Bills. I'm happy to say that for a fifth consecutive year now, I got the same three back here, all in relatively good health. We're all here. We're all good enough to still do this show. That itself is a blessing, 5 years later. Joe Marino, Locked On Bills. Greg Tompsett, Cover One. Bruce Nolan, the Brooks exclusive. What's going on, gentlemen? How you doing?
Life is good.
Yeah, it is. And this is the one episode where I said, before we got going here, I got three guests on. I really don't know how to operate with three different guests at the same time. So it's kind of going to be maybe a little bit of talking over each other. But good to see you, gentlemen, and I appreciate you guys very much for doing what's become one of my favorite episodes of the entire year, an opportunity for fans to, get some insight on from you guys, into what goes into some of the very best podcasts that are out there for Bills fans, and also to kind of give fans a chance to know just a little bit more about you and how you think about, things other than just the Buffalo Bills. Joe, man, what's up, buddy, man? Good to see you, dude.
It's good to be on with you, Pat. 5 years in a row. That's pretty impressive. Thanks for the invite back on. And anytime I talk about things other than the Bills, that's where it can get a little dangerous. So hopefully we'll have some fun here. And thanks for the invite.
Well, like I said, I want fans to. There's a lot of podcasters out there right now. In fact, let's just actually jump in right now. There's lots of aspiring podcasters out there. There's lots of people who are current podcasters or content creators, whatever you want to call them. They might be listening to the show. I've gotten a lot of feedback with this episode through the first 4 years of doing this. In fact, one of the biggest reaction episodes that I get all year, and people want to learn more from you guys. And let me start here, and I'll go with you first, Bruce. If you're going to give somebody right now who's listening to this show and thinking about starting a podcast or already has one, and they kind of want to pick up some tips here and there, give me a sound piece of advice that you would tell others to not do if they're going to have their own podcast. They want to do their own show. What would be something you tell them that you should probably not do?
Content creation happens not in a vacuum. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens as part of a greater ecosystem. And so because of that, there is a social aspect to it. First off, the internet and social media have essentially made content creation a thing. And without that, it doesn't become a thing. So because of it, it is part of an ecosystem. You, even me, I'm part of an ecosystem. So my number one piece of advice is don't be a jerk. And what I mean by this is don't make enemies of people for no reason, specifically other media and content creators. This isn't prison. You don't find the biggest guy in the yard and beat him up on your first day to prove how seriously you should be taken. That's not how this works. And so because of that, and because of this desire and this competitive nature, people really early on will just burn all the bridges. And they don't realize they're part of an ecosystem. And then before too long, they end up sitting there surrounded by everything on fire and going, I don't understand what happened. You did. You happened. You set everything on fire. So I think that the concept of competition is fine. We'll talk about later as to why I don't really buy it, but I understand why you would think that. And I'm cool with that. But that doesn't mean we have to be jerks. And there's not a lot of stuff that's not public when you have those interactions with people. Those conversations are happening on a public forum. You are not walking up and having a conversation with someone. You are walking into a public forum and screaming it at them. That is not how this works in normal conversation. So if you think, well, I could get away with that saying it to his face, you're not saying it to his face. You are screaming it for everyone to hear, including the people you want to be your prospective listeners and all of their prospective listeners. And because of that, there's an escalation over and over and over and over again, and it just creates nonsense and drama and burned bridges and issues down the line. And it's just not worth it, guys. I don't know what to tell you. And so I think the concept of this being an ecosystem and not being prison, I think is lost on some new people. You've seen them. You've seen them come in. They're hot off the presses and they're really passionate and they just burn all the bridges real fast. And that's not a good thing. People will literally not listen to your pod because you made enemies of somebody that they like. Like, that's a real thing out there. So you're just shooting yourself in the foot. The idea that you're somehow going to win, right? That prison mentality, it's not a thing. So just don't be a jerk.
Let me explain for people too. I mean, most people know this, but in case you don't, the three guests that I had today kind of represent three different, for the most part, styles of having a show. Like Bruce, for the most part, does a solo show, although he does have some guests on occasion. Greg, for the most part, is with his partner, Aaron Quinn, although Greg does solo stuff as well. And, he's a guest on many other shows. And, of course, Joe, during the week, for the most part, has a solo show, but he also has a crossover show and does a lot of other projects, too, including the one now on Monday and Thursday with Jerry Ostrowski and Jeremy White as well. So it's kind of like different styles represented here with different shows. Greg, what would you say, like, for somebody right now? Like, what's something to not do, something to avoid for people?
So it plays right off of Bruce's, because I think a lot of what Bruce brought up about the hostility or picking a fight or trying to create drama and the idea that creates attention. Mine is sincerity is really valuable. Like, be genuine and sincere to who you really are. And if you think you need to play a character or put on a persona, like, that's just not real. That's not, and it will be very transparent to your listeners eventually. Like, some people can do that for a while and play a role or a character that's just not genuine or real.
They feel attacked.
And it will eventually come through, so that, I couldn't pretend to pull off a musical show of mine.
Please try.
But it would come across very insincere, and someone who is able to do that with authenticity because of the energy and passion, skill or talent aside, the fact that someone would want to do that comes through very genuinely. On the other side of that, we see people, and I don't blame them, because we see the Skip Baylesses and the Stephen A. Smiths of the world, or even people like, probably the worst example more recently is like the Shannon Sharps or the Robert Griffin III's, where it almost seems insincere in some of the things. Like Robert Griffin III, there are things that if I was one-on-one and we were just sitting in a bar and I happened to be stuck with him and we were in Indy at the Combine, like, I'd be like, do you really think some of those things? Like, do you actually think some of those things? Or has it just worked in that you're just doing what pays the bills because you get the attention, it gets the clicks, and it makes it work? So I don't fault the people who see that and then emulate it. All I can say is I think you have a much more sustainable run picking something. I spend time and energy explaining the minutia of the CBA to people. That's really nerdy. Like, it's right there with doing a musical episode, but it's genuine. Like, I'm passionate about it, so I know that's not going to apply to everyone, but I'm excited about it, and I know that the people that resonates with, they'll pick up on the things that I point out and explain. Like, oh yeah, I noticed that too. Or they'll learn from it, and I'm okay with that, even though I'm creating a niche. Like, I'm limiting my audience and who that's for. It's genuine and real and authentic, and I'd rather do that than pretend to be someone I'm not. And that has worked for me over these almost 10 years. It's been a weird amount of
time. It's good advice. What about you, Joe?
I have a similar answer to Greg, but I'll take another angle on it, because you phrased the question as, what's a sound piece of advice that you tell them not to do? And what I have written down is, don't try to be anything other than yourself. Be authentically yourself. The market doesn't need another Pat Moran or another Greg Tompsett or another Bruce Nolan or another Joe Marino, or fill in the blanks with other people that do this. Those people already exist. You got to figure out what makes you, what makes you different, and lean completely into that. And on top of that, you got to fall in love with the process more than the end result. You can't just be all about that dopamine hit from producing content and people consume it and you get some nice feedback. You're going to burn out on that. You have to fall in love with everything that goes into producing the content, whether that's audio, show development, promotion, graphics, SEO. Don't listen, Bruce. You don't want to hear about SEO. All those types of things. That has to be important to you just as much as that part where you push publish, you share it, and people start to give you feedback. It's got to be the entire process, or else you're going to burn out.
Yeah, I mean, dude, God, I love that answer because that is so true. There's so many times you put in everything into an episode, you feel like you got the perfect guest or whatever, the perfect topic and everything you loved about it, and then you get the numbers, the feedback, and it's not what you hoped. And if you don't love that process, it could burn you out real quick, and it can be sometimes depressing and tough to come back from. I would venture to say that there's a lot of people out there who have probably had podcasts that maybe they quit a little prematurely because of what you guys all just said, especially, you're just not getting the numbers early on and you feel like you're putting in the work, and that could be really discouraging. Let me kind of read. I'll start with you with this one, Greg. Who are a few people in the sports media or just the media in general that have really influenced you, whether they've influenced you when you were younger, before you started content creation, or maybe since you got in? And they don't necessarily have to be another podcaster or even any kind of TV personality, but who are a few of your biggest influences?
So mine go down the path of my first answer, and it's both do happen to have podcasts, but other areas. They both started as writers and then went into that path. One's sports, one's not. The first one's Bill Simmons. I liked his writing when he was starting out, and then started with Page 2 with ESPN when that was still a thing, and then started Grantland, and then went off and started The Ringer, and everything has been very much about his passion and fanhood and comfort just talking, but with the work that goes into it. Like, he has an encyclopedic knowledge of basketball. Like, he wrote the book of basketball, and like his understanding of the history of the game comes through and gives context to his ability to speak intelligently about those things. And he has fun in all the other areas and talks, about football, probably the second most besides basketball, but also movies and just stuff he's passionate about, and just turned his passion and personality into, for him, an incredibly successful venture, but just a great platform and a comfort level that you could just talk about things you're passionate about and just be excited about. The other side of that is Malcolm Gladwell. Like, I love his writing. I read all of his books. I love, revisionist history, his podcast series. And that's more along the lines of where I don't feel bad about being nerdy about the salary cap and the CBA and roster machinations, because I know there's an audience for that, because everything he does, or the guys behind Freakonomics or whatever it is, like, you can find like some really nerdy discussions about, scientific studies and economic debates and studies, or historic events that we remember and think of, and going back and diving in and analyzing those things. To some is like just snooze fest that they would sleep through, and I eat it up. Like, I can't get enough of it. And I have his most recent book sitting right here. I'm going to read it on my flight on Monday to LA. And I can't. Those are guys that really speak to me because they took things that they were super passionate about. They're both obviously very intelligent, very talented, very capable people that probably would have been successful in whatever they did, but seeing them be successful in this vein because of their comfort level, just diving into what they cared about and then hoping they would find an audience, and now finding two of the biggest audiences in the world, is really inspiring to me.
What about you, Joe? Been a few people that have really inspired you along the way, or maybe remain inspiring to you, that influence what you do?
I've got two as well. The first would be Chris McClain. And Chris McClain is a radio host here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live. He does the morning show, and he's been very successful with it. Him and T-Bone. It's Mac and T-Bone in the mornings here in Charlotte. And it was a while ago. They invited me for some in-studio work, and I got a chance to go be in the studio with Chris in particular. And I remember being real nervous about that. I've done a lot of call-in stuff, but never actually there. And I get in the studio and I sit down and I get a chance to see Chris, right? It's radio. You don't see him. Maybe now they're YouTube and stuff, but not back when this was going on.
Mhm.
And to see Chris and the way that he just stood up in his seat when it was time, like when the break was over and it was time to go, this dude stood up in his seat and he, with his entire body, passionately talked about whatever we were getting into. It's Charlotte sports, so it's Panthers, Hornets, stuff like that. But to see that passion in front of me, like that meant something to me. Like I saw the way he attacked. This guy's on radio for 4 hours a day, every day for, I don't know, it's probably been 20 years. And just to see the way that he approached his job, like it was go time, and it was go time for him. And that is something that always meant something to me. Every time that I've been in front of a microphone is, hey, that guy, it does this as often as he does, and he has that type of juice. And that's what I think makes him successful. The other person's probably a big surprise to everyone. It's Brian Barczyk, and I'm not sure anybody here knows who Brian Barczyk is. I wish that somebody did. Brian Barczyk actually recently passed away a couple of years ago. And who is Brian Barczyk? Brian Barczyk is a YouTuber. And it's kind of an interesting story because this is very unexpected. Brian Barczyk is he's passionate about reptiles. I am not passionate about reptiles at all. They're interesting. I like animals, like, they're cool and stuff like that. But he has a reptarium, and he had a BHB reptiles where he breeds snakes and other geckos, all kinds of stuff. And I see Greg's like, Greg, Joe, what are you talking about? This is not what I expected. Well, I watched Brian, and I still do watch his YouTube channel because his family has kind of taken it over since he passed. He unfortunately had cancer. But I stumbled into his videos it was a long time ago. And I couldn't wait every day at lunch to watch Brian Barczyk, not because I cared about the animals. I mean, they were interesting to me, but this man talked with so much passion and enthusiasm about these animals. I just wanted to hear everything that he had to say about them. And I'm learning about different mutations of ball pythons and how they create different, stripes and patterns and different paint jobs, if you will, on the snakes, and how that affects the costs. But this dude he loved it so much. And I found myself caring about this reptarium and this snake breeding operation and his own personal story. And then you get to, like, he gives you behind the scenes, you see his family, his grandkids. Like, I started really caring about this guy because of the passion that he demonstrated through his work. And that is something that inspires me every single day as I produce a lot of content on a daily basis. I want to make sure that my energy, my enthusiasm, my passion is something that maybe you're not even the biggest fan of football. You're the biggest fan of the Bills or whatever I'm talking about, but you could see and listen to how much I care about it. And suddenly you're going to care about it, and we can connect. And obviously that's important for me in growing my brand and my audience, but also the thing that I've really learned to love about what I do is the connection that I've had with people across the globe, because we have a shared common love of the Bills or football. And, Brian's legacy is a big one. And that's funny. He, while he was passing away, he was building an aquarium, and the name of it's Legacy. Get it? Legacy Aquarium. And it recently just opened up like maybe a few weeks ago, to be honest with you. And, just to see so much energy and passion, even when this guy's battling cancer, like, he's at the end, like you could tell, but he still brought it every single freaking day. And that inspires me and has inspired me and will continue to inspire me to make sure that there's passion and enthusiasm behind what I do.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. What about you, Bruce?
I don't suspect that my answer will be as long as Greg's and Joe's. From a content standpoint, I got nothing for you. I just do what I feel like doing. And if I've never done it before, or if nobody else has done it before, or if I did it last week, I don't really care. If it sounds like fun, I'm going to do it. And so that leads to discussions about moral philosophy, and it leads to discussions about logical, fallacies. And as Greg mentioned, musicals, and that's fine. It's just a creative outlet for me to be able to do what I want to do. And if it's loosely tied to the Bills, so be it. From a delivery standpoint, I actually do have some specific influences. And that is, I have a bad habit of talking really fast. So people who know me in my real life, my wife, my in-laws, my coworkers, things like that, they're like, wow, Bruce talks really fast. And that works when you can see me. It doesn't work quite as well in an audio format. And so because of that, I had to learn a new cadence when I started. And so in order to figure out what I would like that cadence to be, and part of it's being comfortable with silence. And I think people aren't when you first start off, you're nervous. So you have to feel like you need to fill the gaps. There were two influences. The first was Colin Cowherd. I don't think there is somebody in the sports media landscape that is as comfortable with silence as Colin Cowherd is. And so because of that, there's spacing, there's dramatic pauses, there's a specific syntax that he does. And I thought it was valuable that I learned. So I sat and I took notes and I recorded it and I figured out what I was going to do. If you listen to old Bruce podcasts, you'll see it wasn't always as well paced as it is now, but I've learned. The second one is somebody who I suspect that Joe might be familiar with because it's in his backyard. And that is a pastor. Stephen Furtick is a pastor in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I am familiar with his work, and his specific syntax, his specific cadence is something that I have worked to pick up because, of course, when you are a pastor, there is, again, you have to be a little comfortable with silence. You have to be able to say your point. Sometimes it's an art of speech writing, right? The art of speech writing is tell someone what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you want to tell them, and then tell them what you told them, right? That's like the art of speech writing, right? And so there's a lot of those parallels in podcasting and in preaching and things like that. And so that's been an influence from a cadence standpoint. From a content, I got nothing. I sat here and I thought about it for a long time. I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Mushrooms? I don't know. Like what's your influence? You know, like, I don't know. But for delivery, I think it's probably that's Colin Cowherd's specific pastors. And I think Stephen Furtick probably falls in that.
There's definitely some interesting answers there. One more before we get to a break. And I feel like I'm probably going to get different variations of what the same answer is. But I do think it's important to ask from a content creator standpoint. We're all Buffalo Bills fans. Nobody tries to hide from that. We don't try to pretend like we're Bills fans. We don't pretend like, like people at the Buffalo News will say they're not a fan and they could care less who wins the game. We do care and we don't run from that. But you also have to have a level of objectivity on how you cover the team on your various shows. Remaining objective is important. How difficult is it sometimes to not be overly emotional after a very tough loss? And especially in the case of the Buffalo Bills over the last handful of seasons, a season-ending playoff loss, a couple of them which they absolutely should have won those games. I guess what I'm asking you is balancing the ability to kind of be objective and not overly emotional versus how you're really feeling inside, where it's just it's eating away at you, but you don't want to project that, and not at least too much anyway, in your various shows. Let's start with you, Greg. What do you think?
So my first answer was I don't think you have to.
Okay.
And it's in the semantics of what's there. I don't see emotional and objective as counterparts, as two sides of the same coin. I can remain objective while being emotional and showing emotion and caring about what I'm doing. I don't think people want to hear ranting and ravings with no information, with no explanation, with no processing, with no ability to walk through the how and the why, or sharing the frustration. I do think, Aaron and I every year show that, some of our most successful shows are after some really painful losses.
Sure.
And not the inflation of the year end one, like even like the Rams game last year and things like that. Like that was a loss, but there was a ton of people that want to talk about it. And you have that in a lot of different moments. So whether that's commiserating or wanting that shared experience, that's what people are looking for. So people don't want to come on. And again, this is not a shot. Those guys, that say that have different jobs. Now, some of them also choose to produce content in addition to their journalism. None of the four of us are journalists. Like I have no obligation to be objective. It's not a requirement. Like I didn't go to journalism school. I'm not reporting information that has an obligation for objectivity. I can be as biased as I want to be. I am biased pretty often. So I have no obligation to do that. Now, if I can't be informative, if I can't share interesting information while being a fan and while hosting a show and while sharing emotional responses to what I think are bad decisions or debating each side of, at least hotly contested, decisions or events or outcomes, well, then that I don't have good content. I don't have to be objective to do that. I just need to be informative. I need to be able to share information beyond ranting and raving. I think some people will have emotional responses to things, but maybe after the fun 2-minute clip runs out, you're not really sharing much, and those people turn off and go somewhere else to find their content. So I think you can find a balance there where you can be pretty genuinely emotional in whatever your version of ranting and raving is. But if you're still sharing information, it's still there because people are coming to you for the shared experience of like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. I want to know what Joe thinks about that. And that's why they come there. So Aaron and I obviously have kind of harnessed that in our live, we go live minutes after the game ends. There's an awful lot of those that are hard. Like there's some where we look at each other like, God, I can't believe I'm about to press this button. But we do. And, that processing is as healthy for he and I as it is for the audience that listens. And we think what we've built is partly in that commiseration and people wanting to come in for that shared experience, even when it's a difficult one.
It's a good point. Joe, same thing. Some insight from you. And also, has there been a specific game where it was tough to cover it afterwards, like tougher than the others? You know what I mean? It's like, you got to do it. You got a job to do. And in your case, literally you have a job to do in your case. But has there been a game or two where it's like, man, this is not going to be fun? You're talking about the passion and the energy that you bring to your show every day. But again, the humanness in you, the Bills fan and a tough loss. Has there ever been a game or two that I don't want to say that you almost didn't do the show, but like you were feeling definitely some kind of way before you hit record, like as Greg said?
Yeah, there is a game that comes to mind. First of all, I will say, getting a little too experienced with these playoff loss post-game pods. I'd like to not have to do that. I think the game that stands out the most to me is like, boy, I don't want to do this. It's after the week 1, 2023 Monday Night Football loss to the Jets. I had to get on a podcast and talk about how bad my favorite football player ever played. And had to be, there's no way around it. It's like, I got to sit here and I just got to be objective that this dude was terrible. And it's week 1. We're all excited. It's Monday Night Football. You waited forever to get to this game. And boy, just played like he was in high school. And I didn't want to have that conversation, but I did. So that stands out to me. But to answer the original question here, I thought Greg did a great job of talking about how objective and emotion, like those are not counterparts. You can be both. But I would say for me, what I think helps me stay grounded within that is that I love the Buffalo Bills. I love football. And me being a football guy at my core, I think forces me to be honest, right? Like I know good ball and know bad ball. And my love for the Bills doesn't cloud whether something's good or bad. And so I think I do a decent job of that. And I always tell myself, whether it's a big moment, whether it's a big win, a big loss, a big contract, a big transaction, or just whatever I'm doing that day, I say to myself every time before I hit record, be honest, tell them how you feel. Just be honest and tell them how you feel. And I think that's worked well for me. But yeah, at my core, being a football guy helps me be honest about what I'm seeing from the Bills.
Now, Bruce, when it comes to your case, generally speaking, you have the Bruce exclusive that's always dropped on Thursdays. So for the most part, you've had some time to process, but you also do a lot of guest spots on shows that would be out before that. What would you add to that?
I don't understand why people think there's an issue in feeling angry or feeling sad after a loss. You're not held responsible for your feelings. You're held responsible for your actions. The issue isn't the way you feel after a loss. The issue is what you do after a loss. It's lashing out after a loss. This is where irreparable damage is done to relationships. So I allow myself to be emotional, but I don't allow myself to act in a way that will make the temporary more valuable than the long term. The issue isn't feeling emotional. It is acting impulsively. I cannot tell you how many times somebody will, they'll lash out in the comments after me. They'll inevitably get muted because that's what happens. And later on, they'll be like, "Oh, tell Bruce, sorry, I was feeling a certain way." Okay, I'm sorry. Did you always just do exactly what you feel all the time? Is that how it happens? Anytime you feel just a thing, you just do that thing. I mean, is that the thing? Is that what you expect of me as a content creator? The idea that somehow that whatever it is I feel, I'm just going to act that way. I hope not. Like, I hope we have more emotional discipline than that. Like, I hope you expect that of me. And so for me, it's to Greg's point, the idea that those two things can coexist because they don't govern the same thing. I can feel one way and do something else. And that's okay. So I can feel sad and also not lash out, and I can feel angry and also, I've said before on my podcast, we're not going to yell and scream on this podcast and call for people's heads after every little thing. And that's just not what we're going to do. I can feel upset and not do that. If you can't, that's fine, but I can. And so I'm going to. And that's the obligation that I have, because otherwise I end up putting my foot in my mouth all the time. I end up getting cold taked over and over and over again because people love to do that on the internet, right? This you, question mark, right? That's what they love to do because they want you to lash out. Joe Marino has made the point before that when your team loses, your opponent's fans want to watch you unravel. They want to see this. You are giving them what they want.
Can confirm.
So I don't want to do it because it's going to destroy my relationships. I don't want to do it because that's what they want me to do. So I'm just going to allow myself to feel that. But just because I feel it doesn't mean I have to do anything with it.
Great point, guys. All right, let's take a real quick break. Come back on the other side. Got a few more things that I want to get to here in this 5th annual Podcaster Roundtable. All right, back here with 3 of the very best to do it. Joe Marino, Greg Tompsett, Bruce Nolan, Podcaster Roundtable. Let me ask you gentlemen this. And this is something I think that some people at least struggle with. How do you guys measure being helpful and accessible? And by that, I mean, coming on this show. I mean, all 3 of you guys have been on my show plenty of times. You guys guest on a lot of other shows. You're very helpful inside this Bills content creation community, being accessible versus the reality of competition, because in some regards, in some aspects, it is, at the end of the day, a competition. Again, you guys appearing on each other's shows as guests. I'll give you a specific example here. You guys are doing my show right now, and the human only has so many minutes in a day to be able to listen to something. Locked On Bills will be on tomorrow. There might be a handful of people who only have 45 to 60 minutes, and they might end up listening to this show because they're like, oh, I want to hear from Joe Marino, Greg, Bruce. I want to hear what they got to say about a bunch of things. And that might end up being a listener who doesn't listen to Locked On Bills for that specific day. Not that it's that big of a deal, but I wanted to get your insight on that. How do you guys, we'll start with you, Joe. How do you measure being as helpful as you can to as many people as you can to being accessible versus the fact that everyone's competing for eyeballs, and ears here in what we do?
I guess the way I look at it is the more people talking about the Bills, the better. I like to think that I've been a good advocate for a lot of people. I sent Greg a text message literally last night and said, hey, man, you got 15 minutes on Monday to talk salary cap? And he said yes. And I was on his show last week, and I never once thought to myself, man, this is competition. It's like, no, these are friends of mine that I want to talk football with. And if you watch it, you do. If you don't, you don't. But I mean, Bruce, this past week, I loved this show on Thursday. I sent him a text message. I was like, hey, man, banger of a pod. That was an awesome topic. I'd never heard anybody talk about culture that way. Like, great podcast. And I share work of other people all the time. So I just think it's good to root for people. And I mean, I don't really view people as competition. I root for them. I'm a fan of good content. I want to consume it. I root for the success of other people. I'm mindful that there is only so much time that the consumer has to consume, but I'm also really comfortable with the mindset of allowing the market to decide what they want to listen to. You know, everyone do your show and let it stand on its own merit, and people will listen to what they want to listen to. And I'm comfortable admitting that I'm not for everyone. I've had a close family friend tell me, like, I don't like your podcast. It's too analytical. It's too into the weeds. Like, I don't want that level of depth to my Bills conversations. Like, all right, cool, man. Like, no problem. I can live with that. And I think the more comfortable you can become, like realizing that you're not for everyone, that all of us together talking Bills football can benefit to everybody, and the market will decide what they want to listen to. I'm comfortable living in that space, and I want people to be successful. And that's my mindset with it. And I hope everyone has all great success. I mean, like, I'm rooting for everybody.
I was going to say, too, this extends beyond the three of you guys. Just generally speaking, the Bills content creation community is very supportive, I think, for the most part anyway, of each other. And I'm always seeing collaborations and interactions with variant shows, and that's really cool. Bruce, I mean, again, I'm sure, like I said, for the most part, it's going to be probably the same type of answer. But what's your mindset towards that? Because you do a lot of guest spots.
I'm going to bust out my invincible meme here, and I'm going to say that's the neat thing. You don't, right? Like, I don't. How do you measure it? I don't. I don't care. I don't care at all. I'm competing for listens. Cool. All right. So let's play this one out. Okay. So I don't do the podcasts and I get a few more listens. Okay, cool. Now what? So I got an extra 20 listeners this month. That's awesome. Now what? Am I going to become a professional podcaster that doesn't show his face and doesn't do video and drops a show one time a week? Is that going to happen? Like, is that within the range of outcomes here? So, like, what's the end game here, guys? Okay, hey, you know what? I win. Huh? Yeah. I took down Joe Marino, right? I took down Greg Tompsett. I took down Pat. Okay, then what? Then, like, what then? What's it going to look like? I'm just going to be alone on top of the mountain with all the bodies that in my wake that I left behind them? Like, think this through, folks. It doesn't matter. I don't care. What does it matter? Joe has pointed out, Greg has pointed out how my disdain for SEO and how I do not care, right? I spit in the face of SEO with the titles of my podcast and the way we do things, because I don't care. What's it going to get me? It's going to get me, what, a couple more listens every single month? Okay, cool. What does that translate to? What, I don't know, $15? Who cares? Like, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm not out here trying to be any bigger than I am. So I'm going to go through all this, and I'm going to have that animosity. I'm going to have that competitive mindset. I'm going to have that mentality, all for what? Like, what am I going to get out of it? Like, when this is all done, right? When I hang up the boots or the podcast mic or whatever metaphor you want to use, and however many years that is, okay, I look back and go, yeah, I really showed them. Yeah, I got an extra $10 a month by competing with my Greg Tompsetts and my Joe Marinos and my Pat Morans of the world. Yeah, cool, good job. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't care. That's my take.
It's a fair take. It's a fair take. Greg, what do you think? And I'd also add, too, the cover one, the brand itself, man. Guys are incredibly generous. Aaron's been on my show a million times. Anthony Prohaska, I always see him on, like, Rock Pile Report. He'll do shows if people ask. A lot of people from your brand. Kind of just speak on that a little bit. I lost you, buddy. Muted.
So internally, I'll tell you, we don't have a ton of, like, rules within the company. We let everybody kind of be themselves. One of the only things we come down on people hard for is not crediting other people's work. And just because, like, there's no reason not to. Like, the people that, like, steal content or take other people's things, where it pretty, like, that's a pretty direct line of competition. Like, you feel so insecure about what you produce that you need to take it from other people and pass it off as your own. That really upsets us. Like, that's
Sure.
something we've, like, almost fired people for, like, had to give, like, pretty serious warnings about, like, hey, we don't do that. Like, you don't need to do that. There's no there's no downside to crediting other people's work and then giving your take on it, sharing what your thoughts are, doing whatever it is, but credit people's work. Like they did that, credit where it's coming from. And I approach the same way. Like I see going on Joe's show today with Bill Squad to join him and Jerry Ostrowski, that's an opportunity for people to hear me. Not only is it not competition, that's benefiting me. That like, hey, if I do a good job, that's maybe a new set of ears or eyeballs that didn't see me before, didn't hear me before. The same as here. Like although we all have our Venn diagrams, it's not one circle, but there's plenty of overlap. Like there's plenty of people that listen to all 4 shows that are on here right now, but there's an awful lot that don't. And Aaron and I have to remind people all the time, most people aren't online all the time. Most people aren't on Twitter. I can tell you, I see our numbers, I see our downloads, I see our views, and I can tell you how much of those come from other areas, and then how many people we get comments from, how many people say incredibly cruel, nasty things to me on the internet. And I can tell you, the one number is way, way bigger. There's thousands of people who enjoy what we do, listen, take it in, and then go about their lives and aren't chronically online to be able to do those things. So the idea that you're competing for eyeballs or ears, like I share with tons of people, both professionally and within Cover One and with our team, like my philosophy in life is stacking little blocks of positivity. You never know when someone could have a decision that impacts your life, has the ability to come back and do something that benefits you or helps you. And if you had positive interactions with them in the past, it's much more likely that they're going to make a decision that benefits you and helps you and that wants to support what you're doing when they have that opportunity in that moment. And you never know when that's going to come. So treat everyone like they could benefit you again in the future, or that they could do something. Just do those things to build up those positive impressions every chance that you get. I've never turned down an invite for competitive reasons, only for like personal scheduling reasons. Like, hey, I'm really sorry. And my normal response to every time I get asked is, sure, if we can work out the schedule, I'd be happy to. Like, that's my default response every single time. And then most of the time we can. Sometimes we have to defer it. Sometimes we can't, but for the most part, it works out. A couple other examples, like I shoot the guys over at like Buffalo Fanatics nice notes all the time because I see them as another like independent platform group that comes up to, like, people would probably think that we're competitive with them. I shoot them nice notes all the time. Like, oh my God, I can't believe you guys went for that long on that show and you guys kept an audience for that long. That's crazy. Because they're good for them, man. That's awesome. Like there's an entire group of Bills fans that are excited about that. I would much rather handle myself that way and give people credit for great things that they do than have some weird, petty competitive element for something that isn't going to benefit me.
And I want to reiterate to everybody who's listening to the show, again, going back to the top, this is an opportunity to kind of get to know these guys a little bit more and how they think, and also for people out there, and I know there's some people who have a podcast or want to start a podcast that are listening. So heed this kind of advice. Do other shows. Don't treat it, even if it is a competition, you don't have to treat it as such, and that could actually, to Greg's point, which I thought was a great one, in many cases it'll actually benefit you by jumping on and doing other shows. I want to switch gears here because this is something that I think I know I struggle with a lot, and it's really hard to have a correct answer. Do you ever find it difficult when there's so much shit going on in the world? You know what I mean? With politics and society and just so many things that piss you off, but you are a Buffalo Bills sports talk show host for the most part anyway, and it doesn't, talking politics and having these political rants it's not what you do on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't fit what your show is supposed to be. And also the fear of losing part of an audience for, say, talking about something that has nothing to do with what you talk about on a day-to-day basis. But then there's times where it's just, you want to get off your chest because something out there in the world is really pissing you off. Do you struggle with the whole stick to sports mentality when there is something on your mind? Because I'll give you an example. We're doing a show right now, and say somebody's watching it. If I had a Trump hoodie on right now, half the people who are watching this, 40% of the people or more are watching this would probably want to turn it off. Yeah, and 40% of it, no matter what I said, no matter how stupid I sound, would probably like me because I have a Trump hoodie on. You get what I'm saying, but just generally speaking, the whole society, political thing. Well, sorry, you, Joe. Is it tough to really sometimes, because to some extent, you could say you don't, but I know everybody's got to bottle it down because it's just not what your people are tuning in for.
Man, I'm batting leadoff on this one. I was excited to hear from everyone else, but I'll do it. Pat, my honest answer is never. I've never once struggled to not chime in on other topics, and I respect everyone's different perspectives on this. But generally speaking, I don't like to share thoughts and takes on things that I don't feel like I have the foundation to speak accurately on them. And I think there's a level of unfound certainty that people have when discussing those types of things that actually really bothers me. I'm not an expert on economics or foreign policy or how to run a government. And so I don't have a lot to say about those things. And I'd be honestly uncomfortable sharing my thoughts. Do I have thoughts? Of course I do. But I don't know if they're right or not. I have what feels right to me, but that's not my area of expertise. I feel comfortable talking about football because I live in it all day. I research it. I study it. I've watched a film. I feel like I've earned the right to have an opinion on football. And I don't want people to like listen to me talk right now and think that I'm some ignorant idiot about what's going on in the world. I just don't have all the answers. I don't have the unfound certainty that I'm the authority on those topics. And when I'm curious about something, I do research it. I ask myself, why does one side see it one way than the other? And I try to understand, but very rarely do I feel like I have a full enough data set of legitimate information to truly develop an opinion to the point where I believe anyone should care about what I have to say. I ask questions. I've asked Bruce questions about things that are going on in the world to get some perspective on because I value the way that he looks at things. But if I were to address something on my show about politics or society, it would really just be me sorting out my own thoughts, but I'd feel pretty unqualified to really share those opinions to the point where I think anyone should care about it. So I don't know. It's a frustrating, I think, environment that we live in from that perspective, because I think it's hard to have good conversations as well. And I guess let me frame it like this. We had an election, right? And all of the people that were on one side of it love what's happening, and the other people that were on the other side of it don't love what's happening, and they're still happy about what's happening, and they're not happy. Like, does anyone just want the best thing for the world to happen? You know, like,
it doesn't feel like it anymore.
Can we just have like whatever's best for America? We've had two very different presidents that just came through, and I can tell you honestly that I've wanted whatever's best for the country to happen all along, regardless of my preferences with it. And I don't know. I just don't feel like there's enough people that look at it like that. Or maybe there's just a lot of loud people, and I'm not being mindful of how many regular people exist out there. But when I don't know, man, I go to the grocery store, I go to the restaurants, I go to the gym, like people are regular people. They're not fighting about this stuff like they are online. And so I don't know, man. I don't really feel that urgency for all the reasons I just said.
Yeah, what do you think, Bruce? And yeah, man, look, there's no right or wrong answer either, too, man. There's some people who choose to keep quiet. There's some people who just, like you said, for the reasons that you don't. And there's others people who are going to say whatever the hell they're feeling, even if they don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's just the way it goes. What are your thoughts on that, Bruce?
This one is tricky for me. And the reason it's tricky for me is because I opened up that bottle. Like, I opened Pandora's box. I talk about things that aren't Buffalo Bills related all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I will talk about sociological and political concepts on my show. Now, I won't talk about partisan issues on my show, and that's the dividing line. And the reason that is because that people hear a politically agnostic, moral, philosophical message, and then they receive it far better if they don't know the political stances of the person who's delivering it. It's that simple. You listen to it and you receive information through the funnel and the filter of what you know about the person who's delivering it. You don't care about the messenger. You don't care about the message, because you don't like the messenger, or you do like the messenger. It doesn't matter. You do or do not like the messenger, and what they say is not relevant, to Joe's point earlier, right? Yeah. I've decided that this messenger is good, therefore everything that comes out of his mouth is good. I've decided the messenger is bad, therefore everything that comes out of his mouth is bad. They're going to do the same thing to me. And so it's tricky because, number one, I will talk about moral, philosophical, political, slanted things on my show. And number two, there are aspects of non-bill stuff that, because of my background or my job or something else I'm not going to give you, I am actually qualified to talk about it. Yeah. I'm just not going to. And so that's the thing that makes it tricky for me, is that there are circumstances where I am qualified to talk about it. And there are circumstances where I could, and I just don't want to. Political ideology is tribalism, not just for the people who are part of the ideology. It is a tribalistic marker for people outside the political ideology to know what to accept and what not to accept from the person delivering the message. So if two people share the exact same moral or philosophical message, and one of them shares your partisan ideals and one of them doesn't, you will receive the message far better from the person who is like you than the person who is not. Yeah. It is the same message, but political tribalism gives us permission to shoot the messenger. I did a pod after the Buffalo shooting that was entirely non-football related. And I do not shy away from those things at all. And I won't. But I know 100% that if I told you who I voted for in the last election, everything I said from there on forward would be viewed through that lens. And there will be some people who would flat out refuse to hear anything I had to say and any future messaging just based on that. And I would be limiting my ability to actually help anything. Like all of my future messaging, regardless of how good it was, and regardless of whether or not I would actually benefit somebody, would be completely wasted at that point. Because you have branded me as something that is different than what you are. And so it is hurtful to my ability to actually help people by becoming partisan. And so I won't do it.
Sounds good. Greg, what do you think, buddy? It's a good take, by the way, Bruce.
Kind of a mix of the two.
Yeah.
Not only am I qualified to, I do. You guys just don't hear it. I don't do it on here. So not to the degree that Bruce segregates his online persona, but I work pretty hard to keep my day job and my hobby separate. I actually don't like it how many people that I work with know that I have a podcast and know that I have this part of my life separate. But I host seminars on tariff discussions and on international business and the impacts of tariffs on the global economy with thousands of people who attend those. It just doesn't have any overlap with my Bills podcast.
Perfect.
I just keep my world separate. So like I don't have to pick and choose. I have an outlet where I get to speak at length in great detail with everything that I care about and think and believe in the right forum, in the right environment, with the people who are informed and educated on that topic, who are interested in talking about that. And I do passionately. It's just not on my Bills show. Everything that everyone listening here sees that version of me, and that account is not my personal account. That's my show's account. That's my online Bills persona account. That's not there. Every once in a while, I tiptoe into things with my son with special needs. It's about it. Like it's just I keep my world separate, and I don't shy away from sharing those things and talking about those things. I just know that there's no value to me sharing that on Twitter or on Facebook. Like, why? Why do I don't care about those people's opinions of the things I've spent my life building my career around. I talk about it with the people in the room. I just watched Hamilton with my daughter the other night. I talk about it with the people in the room where it happens because I get to do that.
Yeah. Perfectly sensible. I feel like things happen now, especially on social media and Twitter, where things are put out there and it almost tries to force you to take a side on something. And I guess in some ways expose somebody for whatever reason. I want to get to a couple more things here before we wrap up. I want to be respectful of everyone's time here recording this with me on a Monday evening. This originally was a two-part question, but we're going to skip the first part. I wanted to ask you guys, we're all a little bit spoiled now because we've been covering the Bills and they've been good for a handful of years now. So it's been fun to talk about, a team that's been a contender every year. A lot of goals, lofty goals, because this team's been really good. If you covered the Bills during the Super Bowl era, I'm sure everyone would say it'd be awesome. You know what I mean? Because you'd be covering a team that's going to the Super Bowl. None of you guys, at least two of you three, I know Joe, Greg, not really hockey guys much. In fact, I get a good kick sometimes out of some of your tweets. online about the Sabres. Bruce, I don't believe you're much of a Sabres or a hockey guy either. But let me ask you this. That team is trash, and they've been horrible now for 14 years, an absolute disgrace. And what do you think it would be like if you had to get up, and you guys are still doing what you do, but instead of the Bills, it was the Sabres, and you had to talk about a team that is near the bottom of the standings almost every year, a team that has tanked in multiple seasons, an owner who's the same owner as the Buffalo Bills, but an owner who does not spend close to the salary cap, and fans at this point are hate watching this team. They're hate consuming this team right now. How difficult would it be for you at this point to cover a team that was just complete garbage year after year? Let's start with you, Greg. Greg don't know hockey, or Greg knows hockey. What's the hashtag?
Greg doesn't know hockey. It's very important. Branding, you got to get it right. So one, I think we are covering a very similar experience to what it would have been like during the 90s, with awesome regular season success, with mind-numbing postseason endings, and tons of questions about why we can't finally get over the hump. Now, again, you want to argue it's better to win another playoff game and go to the Super Bowl. Of course it is. But in general, our experience would be, 18 awesome weeks with one horrific, frustrating week. And the idea that we're all experiencing right now, which is the level of expectation is so high that any regular season loss is completely unacceptable, and most regular season wins are simply expected and not all that special. It'd be super similar in our experience to what we're producing content on right now. Also, I can't think of a better filter than everybody having to produce content during the drought. Right now, some of the pieces that we've touched on earlier, it ain't all that hard to do right now because people are so voracious for more Bills content because the team's awesome. And we have the single most fun player in the NFL to root for on our team. Like, it's easy. It's super easy to create content right now because it's great and it's a ton of fun and people are seeking it out. It actually would have been a really healthy filter if how low the barrier for entry is right now, how easy it is to start a podcast. Like, literally, it can cost almost nothing, or literally nothing if you just use your phone and AirPods, if you already have those things. There's no cost to creating a podcast, and it can grow from there. It would have been very, very healthy for a lot of people who find out the hard way the process that Joe talked about having to be passionate about, and the filter that you talked about of like having to push your way through it, and all the the elements that Bruce has found, those niches that make him passionate and excited about. Most people wouldn't have spent the time to keep going because you would have found out the hard way that you have to be passionate about doing this, because if you're only chasing the views and the clicks and the likes, it's a hell of a lot harder to do when the team sucks. So I actually think it would have been a healthy kind of sanity check for a lot of people that are kind of clipping along doing this. And at some point in whatever, let's hope it's 12 years from now that we're in a post Josh Allen world. Guess what? There's going to be a big reality call, just like the Patriots are experiencing right now, because everything ebbs and flows in the NFL. Like, it's going to go up and down. And that a lot of people who have been clipping along because it's easy to talk about the most fun player in the NFL will find out the hard way. They're like, oh, this isn't as fun when the team's losing and everybody's depressed and I have to analyze stuff that's mind-numbing and painful.
Yeah. Bruce, what about you, man? Would the Bruce exclusive be as passionate to you if, they were going on year 7, even forget about 14, just 7 years in a row of just being stinky like the Sabres have been? Probably.
And the reason that is because Joe alluded to it earlier. I'm a football guy. I just love football. The Bills could cease to exist tomorrow, and I would pick another team, and I would just I'd be really bummed about my team being gone, and then I'd pick another team, and I would just keep going because I love football. And so I think that's part of falling in love with the process, is falling in love with the ecosystem and the environment and the sport. I think also it provides you perspective on your team, and the perspective can help level out some of the highs and lows. And so I think that if you're a football person and you cover a football team, That makes it a lot easier than if you're just a Bills person and you cover the Bills. And then the Bills are bad and you're like, well, this is all I got to talk about is bad. But if you love football, then you're still talking about good stuff, even if you're talking about a bad team, because you're still talking about something you love. And so I think part of that is just being a football person. And then part of it is just falling in love with the process. Part of it's falling in love with doing what you got to do. I have 6 or 7 individual song parodies that I'm working on now. And every once in a while I'll have a line that comes to me, right, about a song parody about the Buffalo Bills. And I'll be listening. Oh, yeah, I think I like that line. Greg and I have talked about this recently, I think, where we said, hey, there's something to be said for Spencer Brown's song instead of Mr. Brightside saying Mr. Rightside. Like there's something there, and I've got most of it already written. Now the problem is I sound like garbage when I try and sing because there's a filter on it's a whole thing. But the point is that does that matter if the Bills are good or not? Like that's all that stuff's independent of whether or not the Bills are good. I'm just here to have a good time, man. So like, I don't think it really matters to me. I think if it does matter, then you're going to ride the roller coaster, and I don't want to ride the roller coaster.
Yeah. Joe, does it matter to you? Now, again, I'll say that we're all at different levels here. In the case of Joe, this is your career, literally. This is what you do for a living. This is full time for Joe Marino. So obviously you'd still be doing Locked On Bills and all the other stuff you do, but would it be less fun covering a team to you anyway that just, habitually stinks?
I've often talked about my time in sports media, and I think one thing that's really different from me than a lot of people that entered this field is that a lot of them have went to journalism schools and did the things that they were supposed to do to get these types of opportunities, and they didn't do anything else. I did. I worked for a long time doing jobs that I did not enjoy. With the only thing I wanted to do was talk about football. And so whether it's a 3-14 now, is that how that math goes? 3-14 or a 14-3 team. I'm going to relish that opportunity to continue to do this job. Now, do I wonder where I would have fit in a drought era Bills content creation world? Yeah, I wonder, because I didn't think much of those teams, man. I had a lot of bad things to say about Rex Ryan and these quarterbacks, and I thought a lot of these players were really overrated, and I didn't have much of expectations. It's funny, you go back like your memories on Facebook, and I see what I was saying about the Bills at the time. I'm like, boy, man, this was a different world back then.
I had a lot of problems with you people, and you're going to hear about them.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I was a younger version of myself then too. But yeah, I do. I'm thankful for my timing. I started doing Locked On Bills January 2019, and I think that's the perfect day for me to join the party here. Because there's always going to be that story of the Bills, the 17 years, and I think there's probably a lot of challenging conversations that would have been had during that time. And I think about a lot of the guys at WGR, and I feel bad for them because they were part of that conversation, and there's a lot of bad blood for those people. And I wonder, like, would I have more haters than I do if I was bad mouthing the head coach and the quarterback all the time, because I didn't think much of them. So I would do what I said I would do earlier. I'd wake up every day and I'd be honest and tell people how I feel.
All right. Let's last 2 questions here. We'll fly through this one too. We'll start with you. Keep it here with you, Joe. Who's a dream guest that you would love to have on one of your shows that you've not had yet? Somebody you would love to have on, but you have not yet had an opportunity to talk to them.
John Gruden. That guy is that way all the time. I had a chance to be around him at the Senior Bowl that year, and I've had some friends that have spent one-on-one time with him. And the way that he is on, you've seen him do his own content, and you've seen him as a coach, you've seen him as a broadcaster. That dude is just all gas all the time, and it's very authentic. Like that, like it's not a show. That dude is that dude all the time, and I'd love to just have him on and talk to him.
What about you, Bruce?
So I had mine recently. So Ariel Helwani was mine.
Yeah.
Ariel Helwani, Buffalo Bills fan, Toronto native. And you guys mentioned earlier that I'm not much of a hockey guy. I'm not much of an anything guy aside from football and mixed martial arts. And so there's an opportunity for those two things, combat sports and football, to kind of overlap. And that's if you add a third circle to the Venn diagram and it's Buffalo Bills, like the only two people in that spot are like me and Ariel Helwani. Like that's it. Those are the only two people in that spot. And so he was on my list for a long time. And he reached out a while ago and was like, hey, somebody said you wanted me to have me on your show. And I was like, yes, I want to have you on my show. And he came on and we did the show and we said, hey, you know what? If the Bills win the Super Bowl, we're going to do it again. And so that was my dream guest. And I was really excited about it. And I guess I can retire now. I did it.
Well, that's a good get, man. Congratulations on that. What about you, Greg? Who's somebody that you'd love to chop it up with that you haven't had a chance to get?
So I mean, it would probably be one of the two guys I brought up earlier, either Malcolm Gladwell or Bill Simmons in our sphere. Obviously, Joe and I have talked about it before. Like I adore Bruce Smith and have rewatched tons of his, film and watching the way he approached that, like being able to talk to him about, pass rush and things like that would be really, really cool. So those are probably the areas I would lean into. I think that would be really, really fun to be able to dive in with either somebody who built up what Bill Simmons or Malcolm Gladwell did, or just being selfish would probably be Bruce.
Okay. All right. Last one here. All right. Listen, everybody knows, Buffalo Bills knowledge. You guys bring that. But you also are all good speakers, really good production value. Let's just say the Bills podcast had to go away for whatever reason, or you could keep them, I guess, I suppose. But you could start another podcast, okay, and would be successful at absolutely anything that you wanted to do for a podcast. But the caveat is it cannot be sports related. I know we're all sports guys at our core, but it can't be sports related. If you had an idea and you wanted to start a podcast and it was going to be good, but it's not going to be sports in your own little world, what would be a podcast that you would consider wanting to do?
I would do a show with Mrs. Nolan, and it would be about food. Awesome. Okay. And because I already did a food for thought with Nate Geary, and for me, there's almost infinite content there to be able to talk about. And so I think that matters. I think the idea that I would be able to do it with my wife, I think would be cool. And she and I would be able to speak intelligently on it and be able to have conversations about the dynamic culture of food. And I think it's one of those rare things. We talked about a lot of things earlier in this podcast that divide people. Food is one of those things that doesn't do that. It really does. It brings people together. I've mentioned before that food Twitter is the best Twitter because I've never had my life threatened by someone who didn't like my choice of cheese. So for me, food Twitter is the best Twitter because it's the most accepting of opinions that aren't yours. Like, I mean, think about Dan Orlovsky and all of his horrendous food takes, right? It's all in good fun. You know what I mean? Like no one gets, if you say that I think Lamar Jackson is the 15th best quarterback in the world, someone will threaten your life. Yeah. If you say sharp cheddar cheese is the worst cheddar cheese, people are like, what are you talking about, man? You're crazy, but it's all in good fun.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's so multifaceted. I'd be able to do it with my wife. I would be able to have infinite content. It would be a great community and I'd be for it. So for me, it's food and it's with Mrs. Nolan.
I never really thought about it that way. When you're right, though, with food, Twitter is the best Twitter because
it's the best Twitter
about wings. It's like 9/11 or whatever. You're crazy, but you're right. It doesn't get ugly. It doesn't get nasty.
It never gets ugly. We're all just here for a good time.
That's a good point. I never thought of it that way. What would you do, Greg?
So mine would definitely be like a special needs parenting podcast. Like talking through with other people what they deal with, like ideas. Some of it, I actually love a handful of stand-up comedians who are comfortable making fun of their special needs kids. Because like they're just kids. Like sometimes they're assholes. Like it's okay to say that. Like, my kid's awesome. Like he's the sweetest kid in the world, but sometimes he's a dick. Like that's okay. Like it's okay to say that. You don't have to like put them in this little bubble. I would want to have like real conversations telling the horrific stories about like these just unbelievable meltdowns in the worst possible situations and places, and when you want to like just melt into the earth, and just sharing that, because I think it's really healthy for other people to hear that and to be able to talk through and to realize that like, hey, yeah, that's, it's just part of life, man. Like, this is just what our life is now. This is how he was supposed to be and how he lives, and all the awesome, wonderful part. Like, his laugh is the most amazing sound in the entire world to me. And sometimes I wish I could strangle him. Like, it's okay to have both of those things, and being able to help more people, which there's a ton of people in our situation, hear that and experience that and have some things to laugh about, or to realize that, oh man, I'm not the only one that has to deal with that. That's something I would want to do.
That's awesome. All right, Joe Marino, you got the last word, man. What about you?
Well, I feel like a theme of that I've picked up on myself and the things I've talked about today is that passion is like an overwhelming theme of what I've tried to communicate today. And I guess that spills into my alternative podcast reality, where there is something that I'm more passionate about than the Buffalo Bills and football, and that's being a dad and a husband. And I would want to talk about that. And I don't have it figured out, man. Like, so let me go ahead and start there. I don't have being a husband or a father figured out by any means, but I have a lot to say about it. And I think there's a lot of great stories and experiences that I could share that I'd love to, impart. I love to cook. Parenting is all kinds of things, sometimes fun, sometimes not so much. Spouse relationships, the man stress. I think that's a big thing that people need to talk more about. Like, as men, you should burden yourself with being fully present to your wife, to your kids, to your career, to yourself. And sometimes you don't feel like you're given anything to those things, and it's difficult. And I think people need to talk more about it. Working out, taking care of the lawn, it's just regular stuff. I would have fun talking about those things, because I feel like that's actually something I'm passionate about. So dad life, parenting, husband, all that type of stuff would be what I'd want to do for a pod.
This is awesome.
I'd want to guest. I'd want to guest on that one.
Well, you already people. I mean, when I had to hook up a car seat for the first time, you know what I did? I FaceTimed Greg Tompsett and we hooked up a car seat. You know what I mean? So actually,
that's true. It's factually accurate. That is true.
Or when I was time to get like a new bedroom set, was like, hey, the crib's not working out, and I was ready to go down one path. I was like, all right, let me just talk to Greg. He helped me with the car seat, and I called up Greg and I did exactly what you said, and I'm glad I did. In terms of just go ahead and get the beds,
dude,
the whole thing,
the conversion thing.
I don't need a Minnie Mouse bed. Just go ahead and get the bed, and I'm glad we did. So a lot of fun stories I could share with that.
This is awesome, man. This remains, honest to God, man, one of my favorite episodes that I do every year. Like I said, fans get to see you in a different light a little bit for an hour or so, even if it's just for one day, taking a break from talking about the Bills themselves and just put a little more insight into your life and how you think. And again, for some podcasters out there, how you guys operate, which could be helpful. I'm going to put all the information for everybody in the show notes. But if you're watching this show, you already know who these guys are. So make sure you're following them. I appreciate you guys so much, man. This was a lot of fun.
Hey, Pat, real quick. I can't help but notice that the entire panel, minus you, is a Dynasty League football champion. So maybe you can for next year.
That's wrong.
Hey, your team is stacked. You're welcome for Josh Jacobs. Not sure what I was thinking there. But maybe we can have a 4-way champion panel next year.
Yeah, that's bullshit, man. You are right. Technically, you three are Dynasty.
Not only are we're the only 3 champions in the league.
All right. I hate all 3 of you guys. Do not follow them anywhere on social media. I'll be back with a brand new show. Seriously, though, thank you, man. 3 of the very best to do it. Greg, Bruce, Joe. Talk to you guys tomorrow.